Good morning. The hearing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2020. The time is just after 9:05 a.m. and we are meeting in the hearing board room in Diamond Bar. We have one change to the calendar today, and that is that our hearing board general meeting for this month has been canceled. So we will take it up, anything up in February. And we have one matter on the calendar for today, and that is in the matter of South Coast AQMD versus Torrance Refining Company, case number 6060-5, a status report and modification hearing. And who is representing the executive officer this morning?
Daphne Sue.
And Karen Manwaring on behalf of the executive officer.
Good morning, both of you. And who is representing Torrance Refining this morning?
Good morning again. It's Michael McDonough from Pillsbury on behalf of PBF Torrance Refinery.
Good morning, Mr. McDonough. And we have two new members of the board who have not been present at any of the hearings or status conferences that we've had in this matter. So I'm going to call on each one because each one did watch the webcast of the last hearing and did catch themselves up on the facts of this case. So I'm going to call first on Dr. Bernstein to let us know whether you are prepared today to hear the status report and hear any possible or potential modifications today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, same question.
Yes, I'm prepared.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, I don't know, Ms. Manwaring, if you'd like to, or I'm sorry, Ms. Sue, if you'd like to start with an opening on today's status.
Good morning. The point of this order is for the Torrance Refinery to reduce smoking flaring related to power disruptions. And the work done pursuant to this order and outside of this order has done that. In 2016, the Torrance Refinery had multiple flaring events after power supply disruptions. On October 11th, 2016, the refinery suffered from a power outage that affected more than 100,000 customers in the South Bay and lasted over 20 minutes. The refinery lost its steam systems and diverted gases to its flares. The steam reduces smoking in flares. The smoking flaring could be seen from miles away. The Torrance Refinery agreed to an abatement order to combat the problem of smoking flaring, and it began the process of a long-term project known as the 220 kV proposal to upgrade the electrical power distribution system supplying power to the Torrance Refinery. And it has been updating the public on its progress. It also improved communications with Southern California Edison, who supplies electricity to the refinery. Please note, Edison is not a party to this order. It also evaluated its safety critical devices and installed backup power to those that did not have backup power. They evaluated about 2,500 devices and identified over 200 for which they installed backup. It also evaluated critical utility systems for possible improvements. They identified upgrades to a boiler 22F-4 to allow for 30 minutes of boiler operation. They have completed some of this work and will complete the rest in April during a turnaround. It also evaluated the feasibility of a temporary steam supply. And finally, it performed a refresher training on loss of power procedures and performed a drill simulating a power outage. The refinery also made improvements above and beyond the requirements of the order. The progress at the refinery is apparent in the refinery's flaring records. In the last 3 years, there were about 30 power disturbances, and no flaring due to the power disturbances exceeded opacity limits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McDonough, do you have an opening?
No, that was well said. I would
Like
just say is
yesterday.
yes, as I say in all of these update hearings, we're very happy, pleased to be working with the district in coming up with a solution to smoking from flaring. And as we do in all these update hearings, we're going to have good news to provide you on the status of what we've done so far, and looking forward to continuing.
Thank you. And at this time, anyone who wishes to give testimony or be heard today, if you could please rise to be sworn in at this time. Okay, if you will be. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Okay, Mr. McDonough, you may present your witness.
Okay, and I'll just introduce for the record, this is Meyer Sneer. Mr. Sneer, can you please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record?
Mayor Sneer. Oh, sorry. Mayor Sneer. Do I go through?
Just if you could spell each of those just for the record.
Mayor is M-E-I-R, and Sneer is S-N-I-R.
Okay, and could you remind the board, what is your position at the Torrance Refinery?
I am the reliability manager at the refinery.
Okay, and just a brief recap, I know you've said this to some of the board members, but some haven't heard it, recap of your education and your certifications?
I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering. I am a licensed, registered mechanical engineer of the state of California, and I've been practicing mechanical engineering for 40 years, almost 4 of these at the Torrance Refinery.
Okay, and can you describe your involvement with the stipulated abatement order?
As the reliability manager, this order falls under my jurisdiction.
Want to say again?
Yes, perhaps just get closer, thank you.
As the reliability manager, this abatement order falls under my jurisdiction,
Okay.
my responsibility.
And can you just confirm that you've read the status report that Torrance Refinery has filed with the hearing board and verify that everything in that report is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
I can confirm that.
Okay. So as I'd like to ask you at all of our regular update hearings, how has compliance with the order gone generally?
Very, very well. We are in compliance with the order. We continue to meet all of our milestones and already benefiting from the reliability improvement,
Okay.
which I'll talk more about during the presentation.
Sure, and at the request of council and for the benefit of some on the board who may not have been here during our prior hearings, we wanted to briefly run through the order background, some of its framework, and then talk about the improvements to date. We're going to actually be using a slide presentation just for everybody's benefit here, and you should all have copies there of the slides.
And let's mark that, and I'm wondering, Madam Clerk, do you know what is the next exhibit for
Should be 17,
respondent?
right?
17, thank you.
Respondent
Thank you both.
17.
Okay, so we're going to mark this as Exhibit 17, thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Sneer, I will ask you to explain to the board what they are going to be seeing in the slides here and talk about the background of the order.
So this is a high-level review of the compliance with the order. I will be going fairly quickly through these slides because most of it is repetitious. If you're looking for an explanation or more detail, please stop me.
Okay, and then, yeah, you've got control of the slides.
Okay. So a quick background about the refinery. The previous owner was ExxonMobil. In 2016, July 1st, the Torrance Refining Company took over control of the refinery. I'll be referring to the refinery as the Torrance Refining Company. The refinery is one of the, if not the largest, SCE's customer, and it has been served by SCE since 1929. The picture, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but the picture shows, I'm going to try to use the mouse to show the area, the La Fresa substation, which is the location where SCE transformed the 220 kV, it's connected to 220 kV, and transformed it to the 66 kV, and then sends it through 12 feeders into the refinery, into this area, which is the compressed and mobile substations. So these substations are actually on the refinery property, but owned by the Edison Company. I just want to mention one more thing, that the majority of the issues that we have experienced in 2016, I'll go into a few more details a little bit later, took place in this area of La Fresa. And by the way, that section is servicing not only the refinery, but about 60,000 other customers. After a very short time of about 3 months at the refinery, in September and October 2016, the refinery experienced a major power outages that eventually resulted in significant smoking. The longest one lasted 26 minutes. The equipment in the refinery typically can sustain about 1/10 of a second disruption. So 26 minutes is way too much. And these events basically created the concern about the reliability of the SCE system, the power delivery into the refinery from the La Fresa substation. Because of this concern, in 2016, the refinery and the district jointly initiated an abatement order, which we're talking about right now. In February 2017, the hearing board approved the order, and the refinery agreed to, one, work jointly with SCE to improve the reliability to the power delivery to the refinery, evaluate any potential upgrades and improvement, and take other steps to reduce flaring events associated with power disruption. The refinery is committed to safe, reliable operation, but one of the primary ways to deliver on the reliable and safe operation is getting a reliable power to the refinery. So what we have done so far, right after the order was put in place, the refinery and SCE began working jointly. We have very close relationship. We also work closely with the AQMD district and its consultant expert. The improvement and changes that took place are very consistent with the order and already delivering the benefit of non-smoking flares. I'll be talking about internal to the refinery, inside the fence line improvement, as well as outside the fence line improvement. The majority of the issues that we have experienced that resulted in this power disruption were coming from the La Fresa substations. The results, and I'll be showing and demonstrating it through a chart, there has been a steady downward favorable trend in reduction in the frequency of these power disruptions. When there was a power disruption, the impact of the refinery was minimal, and as we were able to survive it. Sometimes with minor flaring, but none that end up with black smoke. This is the key chart. As you look at 2016, we had 16 power disruptions. We're talking about the second half of 2016, since July 1st, 2016, when PBF took over the refinery. 3 of these events in September and October ended up with significant flaring. In 2017, the number of events dropped to 13, and in 2018 to 9, and 2019 to 8. In 2017, 18, and 19, we ended up with 0 flaring where we had smoke or opacity. This is a major, major improvement as a result of this order. So what was done? I'm not going to read each one of these, and you already heard about the safety critical devices and the UPS backup power that were done internally to the refinery. Essentially, in addition to the order, we have upgraded our system, the boiler system, the hydrogen plant, and the crude unit to be able to sustain these disruptions. What was done externally to the refinery but SCE? SCE spent over $100 million upgrading and improving the system in the La Fresa substation. It involved much faster response to any disruption, power disruption in the relay system, much more robust circuit breakers, upgrade to their insulators, which was one of the causes in 2016, in September 2016, and upgraded their procedure to deal with these disruptions. So what is left from the order? There are basically two conditions. Condition one, which it relates to the 220 kV proposal, and condition four relating to the aux boiler management system. As far as the 220 kV proposal, Torrance has completed the ETAP. ETAP is the modeling tool we use to predict the reliability of the system. The refinery and SE has completed the design and engineering, the design and detail engineering for the proposal. And SE is currently working to obtain the third-party right-of-way to complete the project. For condition four, the aux boiler, some changes already took place, but the final upgrade will be in April of this year. This sketch shows a little bit of the two pieces that this project contains. If you look at area A, highlighted in red, this is completely the responsibility of SCE. It involves tying to the 220 kV, transmitting it all the way to the yellow building, which is the switch station, all the permitting associated with that, all the execution, and obtaining the right-of-way. The refinery is responsible connecting from that building into our existing compress and mobile substations. Since there is no right-of-way issue, it's not applicable, but any permitting and any execution is the responsibility of the refinery. The pictures here illustrate that how tight that area, that right-of-way area is, and why the owner of the area may be concerned about permitting the work by Edison. You can see the distance between these two buildings is about 30 feet. In summary, the original concerns in the La Fresa substation that initiated 2016 events have been addressed. SC spent over $100 million to fix these issues by upgrading the equipment, replacing some of the equipment, and modifying their procedures. In the last 3 years under the order, we have seen a steady, favorable trend manifesting itself in reduction of these power disturbances. So we are seeing less frequent power disruption. When they do occur, the impact is minimal, and flaring, if it does happen, is without any black smoke. The refinery will continue working with SCE to jointly minimize any potential for future power disruption. We enjoy excellent communication and coordination between the refiner and SCE, and the refiner has complied with all the order conditions and will continue to do so. Because this chart is so critical to illustrate the benefit of implementing these reliability enhancement, I wanted to go back to that slide for a second. We don't have any information, any official information prior to July 1st, 2016. But from the information, from the hearsay I get, we did have some other additional events. So 2016 is actually experienced more disruptions and more flaring events. With that, I'll open to any questions.
Well, and just before we do that, let me just ask you a quick question on the last slide, if you'll go back for a second, just to explain the last part of what you were describing on this slide. So for the clarification of the board, in 2016, the number of power disruptions and opacity flaring events, so 16 power disruptions, 3 opacity flaring events, that only represents the time from July of 2016 when Torrance Refinery took over from the former owner ExxonMobil?
That's correct, from July 1st, 2016 to December 31st,
Okay.
2016.
So in terms of other flaring events and other disturbances, you're talking about things that might have happened before Torque took over the refinery?
Correct.
Okay. And I think with that, we'd be open to questions.
Ms. Sue, do you have questions?
I do. Good morning. Hi. You had described that there would be improvements to the aux boiler. To which flares does the aux boiler provide steam?
All the flares.
All the flares. And those are the flares which combust the excess process gases if there were a power disruption? Is that
Correct.
And
You can imagine there's a main header that will go to these flares.
okay. And could you describe how steam may help reduce any opacity issues?
Right, so basically, black smoke during flaring event is material that was not combusted yet. And the steam introduction, the steam to the flare dissipate and breaks down that particulate matter and help it combust. So you don't end up with any black smoke.
Great, thank you.
You basically consume the unburned material that's in the air.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Sneer? Ms. Verdugo-Peralta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. However, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that the two newest members, myself and Dr. Bernstein, haven't heard this before other than the tape that we heard last night at home. So don't take it for granted that we have additional knowledge. So if you feel like you're overstating or restating something, go ahead and do it, please, because that is to our benefit. From whom are you trying to get the right-of-way, or Edison is trying to get the right-of-way?
The name of the company is ZA Torrance. That's a trucking and storage company.
A trucking?
So these two buildings basically house much of the produce or the product, whatever they store in that place and then transfer. So it's a transportation companies.
So that area doesn't include an area where they would be parking their trucks, or they don't need it for that purpose?
Well, they need the area to be able to maneuver these trucks into position.
So how likely are they to give up that area?
Well, the idea was to get half of the lanes, let's say it's a two-lane highway, get one of the lanes where you have restricted transportation, and then you work on that one, and then when you finish the work on this side, you shift it to the other one. Just like you would do on any road, public road.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my second question was, the upgrade that Edison is doing that is costing all this amount of money, is that going to also affect the other 60,000 customers that they serve off of that circuit?
That's correct.
Okay,
Affect favorably.
yes, thank you.
Although, I want to go back to your first comment, not to
Sure,
assume
sure,
anything
Mr.
about
Sneer.
it.
Okay, if you have more to add, please.
Is that okay?
Yes.
At the typical house or home, when you have a loss of power for about a second or two, nothing happens. Your TV will come back on, your refrigerator will work. But for us, a tenth of a second is eternal. We cannot tolerate anything longer than tenth of a second.
Having worked for Edison and dealt with outages, sometimes it does affect the customer in that it causes shorts. So any type of a motor that's on their line that's active can be burnt out, so. Other than that, you're right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Mr. Sneer, looking at the slide that we have on, and while there was no zero opacity, there was flaring all those 3 years, but no that exceeded the opacity limits, is that? So
That's
why
correct.
this-
That's
Do you know
correct.
how many incidents occurred in 2017, 2018, 2019?
I have it with me, but I don't have it in front of me. I actually have the number of these events.
Okay, maybe.
But I believe they show the same trend, favorable trend.
And it's because you made changes to the supply of steam?
That's one of the contribution. The other one is the improvement that SCE made in La Fresa, where the response time to relay the power is much quicker, much faster.
So it came back on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going back, and I thought I heard Ms. Sue say there were like approximately 2,500 devices that were looked at, and, you know, your slides say 200, so I'm just trying to,
Yeah, so I can give actually the details behind it. There are approximately 2,200 safety-critical devices.
okay.
Not all of these devices require power. Approximately 368 do require power. Of the 2,200, approximate 2,200, 368 require power. Of the 368, 200 of the 368 require UPS power. In other words, it needs a backup power. 168 of these 368 already had the backup power. That leaves us with about 19 new ones that we had to install. And that was already put in place.
Okay, that addresses, thank you. Couple more questions, and that's in the order. Do you know who the AQMD consultant is?
I know his first name. I believe his name is Charlie, and he visited us early December this year, last year, sorry.
And it represents some organization, I take it? Well, I'm just wondering, it says consultant, I just wanted to know if there was a name or a company who AQMD's consultant is.
Not know who he works for, sorry.
No, okay, no, let me, so now, flaring is important in the black smoke, which is visible to the public. The more area that I was sort of wanted to address is it's on page 10, actually, on line number 23, starting line number 23 in the last.
Yes.
Is that in the update?
Hearing,
Would you
update,
like me
yeah.
to go to
In
that
the
slide?
update?
No, not in the slide, I'm talking about the,
The status hearing update that we received, and what page are you looking at?
page 10,
Page 10.
line number 23. Okay, and because Torrance Refinery is still using modified HF, right, for the alkylation unit?
That's correct.
And so it says, so you have, so what was done here to improve in the event of, and I assume, maybe you can explain what happens if there's a power failure of the pumps for the water system to deluge the release of HF if it occurs?
So we have several pumps, and we have, the system is designed to respond based on the pressure. So I believe we have 9 pumps. And so the pressure is maintained by introducing these pumps in certain order to maintain the pressure to be able to provide the deluge system to the alky unit as well as any other place in the refinery.
So when it says that, needs immediately, so what were the changes or modification that was done?
The main, there are basically two parts to that, to the alky area. One of them is to provide these water curtains once the problem is identified. So making sure that there's enough water supply to the unit during an event, during an emergency event. But the second one is to be able to auto-start some of these pumps so that you do not have to rely on a human being to start these engines.
So
So automating basically the response.
So previously, it had to be manually operated?
I believe at least some of them had to be manually started.
So if you have a power failure, how will the pump, let's say you have a power failure to the refinery, how will this be activated, the pumps?
Through automated system, but I'm gonna have to ask maybe a little bit help from my expert about the control scheme on these pumps. I'm not really that familiar with the details of the startup of these pumps.
Okay, all right. No, because not much was mentioned, except to say that, there was just a short reference to it, so, and this is one of the more critical to the community if there's a release of HF and to control the emissions of HF offsite and within the plant
Right.
too.
But it's not like the system does not exist.
No, I
The system is
understand
in
that.
place.
I just want to know what improvements were made, if any.
Instead of responding in 1 minute to manually start these pumps, you're looking for something that will start within fraction of seconds.
Okay. Yeah, and then, and this might be, I know there was a tabletop exercise that was conducted as part of the agreement. And is that something that's done on a ongoing basis or every so often?
There is a schedule for that, and I believe a representative from the district actually participate in the exercise.
And that was several years ago, and
It was, I believe, last year.
last year, and that was Inspector Steve Sumara,
Sorry?
2017, I think, in 2017. And in the petition said it was District Inspector Steve Sumara.
You're saying it was
It's on
2017?
page 15, at the very line 22.
Okay, so yeah, the district inspector, yeah. So I had the dates wrong. It looks like 2017.
And I think, do you happen to know if Mr. Steve Sumara is still your liaison on this issue, or is it some other? Because my understanding is he has moved over to another area. And so how does who do you liaison with for this tabletop exercise? Do you know subsequent ones?
With the district?
Yeah.
I think it's Paul.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Do a question? I have, I just had one question, and that is, I understand condition 4, that you're not quite yet in compliance because it requires a turnaround, and that will occur in April of 2020. In terms of what's left, I wanted to understand why it is that condition 1 is still not quite finished. Is that because when we went over the update for condition 1, it says that you are in compliance, and they do all have to do with design of the 220 kV proposal. Is it because due to not having yet obtained that third-party right-of-way, that proposal may change? So it is not the final proposal? I'm trying to understand why that continues to be something that is left to complete. And that was on page 9 of your presentation.
So we're talking about condition 1, and I think the question is,
What's left
what's left?
specifically?
What's left is obtaining the right-of-way, because the
Okay.
detailed engineering is completed, is obtaining the right-of-way.
And so, for example, okay, so going through, 1A is to comply with all applicable California Electric Code in designing your portion of the 220 kV proposal. That's completed.
That's complete. The design,
Okay.
the detailed design engineering is complete.
The model in 1B is complete.
ETAP is complete, that's correct.
Okay. Estimating the predicted mean time, that was complete.
That's correct. correct. That's part of the ETAP output, the mean time between failure and mean time to repair. All of these came out of the ETAP study.
And D, the design so that there's no single point of failure that is complete,
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, so is it that your understanding of what is required in condition one is that the proposal may change or the design may change based on the obtaining of the right-of-way? I'm trying to understand what is left. And the reason why, let me just back up more, is that we have jurisdiction over this order, and this order stands as long as all of the conditions are not yet complied with. So once they're complied with, the order ends. So I'm trying to understand what remains
Right.
of condition one.
The information from SC to us, the last communication was mid-November of last year about the difficulty of obtaining the right-of-way. So it's a little bit, with the holidays, we didn't really have a chance to sit down with them and understand the details. I think it's a little bit too early to say that the change is necessary. We do need to meet with them, and we owe you to come back and tell you what is the outcome of that.
Okay, so that's the last piece left in the design, and so, and happily so, that's your understanding of the order, that everything has to be completely ironed out and the design finished
That's correct.
and final. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that, and we all did. Thank you very much for that. Any other?
Follow up on your question.
Oh, you had a follow-up. Mr. Balagopalan had a follow-up on that.
You know, Mr. Snare, if we go to slide 11, that shows the two buildings and the duct.
Would you like me to show it?
Yes, would you, if you can go to that. So it looks like you've sort of gone through the wall with the duct bank, basically, right? Or it stopped there? Or is that, what is that showing?
Yeah, this is it's a graphic representation.
Oh, it's a graphic, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
it's
was,
not really has occurred yet,
I
okay.
was afraid, it's so realistic, I was afraid that people will interpret it's actually done. No, we haven't done any work there.
Oh, okay, okay.
We were not given any permission to do any work there.
I thought you stopped there because they said no.
No, no, sorry about that.
All right.
Dr. Bernstein, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Good morning. Continuing on that slide number 11, I guess this is the proposed project where that gentleman is standing. That's what we're proposing to do. What happens if they don't give you the right-of-way? Then what happens?
If they don't give me the right of way, we have to look at other means to achieve that same reliability that we would gain from a benefit of connecting to 220 directly. Keep in mind, the original issue was with the La Fresa substation, which is connected to 220. Once we improve, I should say we, but once SC improve the reliability of that substation, there's a much better likelihood that we will meet the same goal, the same reliability expectation as if we connected to 220. But I think it's a little bit too early for us to tell you what else we want to do. We need to work on that and digest it.
So Plan B has not been looked at in case they decide not to give you the right-of-way here?
There is a lot of possibilities. SC actually looked at other alternatives to routing that, but none of them look feasible because of safety concerns, mainly safety concerns to the public. Sorry. So we're not at the point that I can tell you, number one, that I have given up on that option. It's too early. And I'm not ready to tell you what other alternative we have in hand.
When this is, will this banking be underground or will it be above ground just like this?
Underground.
So then.
The whole idea about putting these cables underground is not to be subject to balloons or fog or any weather.
Okay, got it. So in saying that then, that area that appears to be a concern would still be able to be utilized above ground.
That's correct. That's correct.
So then in all likelihood, it looks like it's really not really a problem once I guess everybody sits down and gets it together, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, do you have questions?
Southern California Edison had a failure, is it correct? Initially, which caused this action to be taken?
Edison had three different power disruption in 2016, that's
I
correct.
know the major one was the one that initiated this activity. Is that not correct?
That's correct, the one lasting 26 minutes.
Right. What caused it? I think I remember, but you tell me, and the new members, what supposedly caused the breakdown in the transformer?
Well, I can tell you that it has to do, it was initiated by some kind of interference in the system. They have sensors that sense the delivery of power, and that basically trip or open the circuit, and it causes power disruption.
Anything the birds had, and the weather had anything to do with it?
Sorry?
The birds,
No,
Weather?
I don't think that time was a bird. I think it had to do with the weather. It was fog. Fog that basically allowed for a short between two conductors, and that, of course, opened a circuit to protect the rest of the system.
the fog did this?
The fog permitted a short, it actually a spark jump between two contact points.
Right, and then who made the decision to therefore put the power supply on at the site of the refinery rather than have the Southern California Edison provide the power where the source came from the poles or wherever it was originally?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question? I'm not
Yeah.
sure I follow.
What you decided was we're going to be independent of Edison in terms of controlling our power, 220,000 volts on this, at the refinery. You made that decision, is that not correct?
That's correct. In 2016, keep in mind, we're only 3 months into owning that facility. Our understanding then that there were so many issues with the La Fresa substation that we're looking to bypass that substation and connect directly to 220. Keep in mind that the La Fresa substation is also connected to 220 system, but we were just trying to bypass that system. At that time, we believed that's our best option to improve the reliability.
We had a lengthy discussion before we had a stipulated agreement. And if you recall, I raised the issue regarding what other part of the subsystem at that location would cause the failure and the flares, boilers or whatever the case may be. We also talked about these specification for the components of the subsystem at that location and trying to determine what the reliability of the system and the mean time to failure.
Correct.
And meantime repair. What's been done in that regard?
So the relay system, the breaker system, the transformer have been either replaced or added with much more robust system being able to withstand and much quicker response time. So we are within that 1/10 of a second ability to survive the power dip. So there's quite a bit. It's over $100 million worth of work that was done there.
So you had, according to your report, a number of failures even since 2016, even with some of the upgrades. What are the upgrades?
I can go to the slide. Which slide number is it? So it's kind of hard to see. It's a little bit small, but
I
you
know,
can
I noticed. Carry on.
You can see that in the La Fresa substation, the automation system has been upgraded, and it has the latest intelligent relays. Relay is a system that provides you the ability to continue to operate. When one system fails, it basically shifts the power to another system.
That's been added, been upgraded or added.
They have been replaced and upgraded. That's correct.
carry
that the
on.
older system took longer time to be able to shift that power from one system to the other. The circuit breakers, the control scheme for that has been upgraded. You can see that a little bit to the middle of the page, the pole line, the 66 kV insulators have been upgraded with much more robust system so that shorting, that spark between two conductors is less likely to happen.
Repeat that, please, sir.
The pole line that carry these cables, the feeders that supply
Right.
the power, have insulators on them. These insulators have been upgraded with much more robust system that is able to protect the system much better than before from the power being jumping over or shorting between two different conductors.
These upgrades, what's the characteristics which suggest that the upgrade is going to be more efficient?
The material that it has higher resistance to conducting electricity. So it's in the shape of it, the size of it, and the material it's made of.
Okay, back, condition number 1, you've been questioning on that already? About the design and engineering for the proposal.
Yes.
And reliability, meaning certain reliability conditions. And condition number 1 of the stipulated order.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, what is the question?
My question is, on the failure rates and mean time to repair, et cetera, where is that specified in this report, if at all?
The actual, the value themselves, the actual
Yeah,
number?
because you're talking about the whole system.
So,
Does that include the entire system?
yes, so the benefits are already shown in the chart that
I'm sorry, you're no longer speaking into your microphone. Thank you.
The chart I showed earlier illustrate the benefit, actually the results of implementing some of these action for improvement of reliability. So the mean time to failure has improved because we have less failures as a result of these enhancements, and we have the duration of these events are much shorter, allowing us to survive any one of these events.
How can you improve on that? On the failure rate?
What on the failure rate?
Yeah.
Instead of something failing on you once every 10 years, if it fails on you once every 20 years, by having a better design, better construction, you have basically doubled the life of the equipment and shortened the likelihood of this to fail.
You had the upgrades, and you had a number of failures since 2016, not 10 years, not 20 years. You had a number of failures.
But the number of events has gone from 16 to, I believe, 13 in 2017 and 9 in 2018. So the number of events is going down.
Those events are failures, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
What activity, what are you doing now to eliminate those failures?
The redundancy is the best way to deal with these failures so they have no impact. But prevention, if I can prevent these from happening in first place, and then have a completely redundant system, so if one of the system fails, I can rely on the second system, that's the best way to approach that.
What's the primary failure of the system? I mean, you've been able to analyze this based on the number of failures you've had before and the ones you're having today.
Usually the information that Edison has is not shared with us, but what I can tell you, some of it has to do with the cable themselves, some of it has to do with the conductors, the connection, the breakers, the long time it takes to relay the system from one to another.
And Edison won't share that information with you?
Typically, they do not share that information.
As to why they have failures? Your customer.
That's correct. That's correct.
What's the likelihood of you fixing the problem if Edison won't share with you the cause of the problem?
They have an obligation to the Public Utility Commission to fix these problems and to supply reliable power to the refinery and to any of their customers. But I'm looking at the final result. The final result is the number of these events, and they're dramatically less. So to me, the proof is in the pudding, in the outcome of that.
But you can't fix the problem if you don't know what causes it.
But they do know the cause.
But you're fixing it, they're not.
No, these are all SCE events, SCE-owned equipment, their maintenance people, their engineers fixing the problem.
All right.
The $100 million that they spend on it, it's all Edison's money.
So for condition number 4, you've been questioning that already, but your upgrade will be April 2020. In what way are you upgrading these boilers?
The boiler management system is a equipment that's called PLC.
Okay.
And the PLC is basically just like your computer at home. And that basically gives instruction and direction how to manage the system, what to do first, what to do second, and so forth. That system requires a complete shutdown of the boiler. That boiler is going to come down in April of this year, and that's when we plan to do it. Doing it online is extremely dangerous and very risky.
So the turnaround is what? What are you doing at the turnaround?
That's correct, in April.
What are you doing?
So
What action, what activity are you taking regarding the boilers during your turnaround?
we're going to change that control scheme for that boiler. The way it is controlled now, we're going to upgrade that to a new management system.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of the questions that we are asking really should be answered either by an operations manager or a planning manager from Edison. While I understand they don't have ownership, a lot of your questions or answers to us are really answers we should be getting from them. For instance, on the cause of the outage, it's very possible that it's due to an overload of the system versus fog. That information is available to you. Have you called anybody from Edison to try to give you that information?
We have tried. We have attempted to get the information, but they're pretty tight-lipped about it. I can tell you that the events that led us in 2016 to this order really had to do with the fog. Now, what
But
happened?
how do you know that if you didn't get an answer from them?
I did get an answer from them, but not an official answer, that this had to do with the fog, and the system, the breaker system and the relay system responding to that.
Okay.
By the way, the fog issue, this is not an unusual situation. This is something that all utilities have to deal with.
All right. I'll let that one go. But I, like Dr. Bernstein, am very concerned about the fact that you don't have a Plan B. Edison has no control over whether that third party is going to give up their right-of-way or not. And they've obviously been difficult up to this time to give that right-of-way. But you don't have a Plan B in sight. And looking at the map on page 2, I can't tell whether that's just totally residential or whether it also involves commercial. So the load on that particular circuit would be dependent upon whether that's just residential or whether it also concerns or is involved with
Are you looking at?
commercial. I'm looking, page 2.
Page 2.
Page 2.
Yes, I can answer some of these questions. So that, you cannot see it right now. Is there any way to project it?
Oh, I'm sorry, our clerk has apparently stepped out.
Here she is.
Rosalinda, we just need the PowerPoint back up.
So in this area here, is that La Fresa substation. We are one of 60,000 other customers. The system is designed to separate the loads properly. So we are basically on a slightly separate part of that substation so that we do not overload them and they do not overload us. So the evaluation calculation of the amount of load required is sufficient to supply us with reliable power. The reliability of the equipment, of the relay system, of the breaker has not been where we want it to be in 2016. But since then, they have improved it, but hasn't changed any of the load issues. By the way, the SCE is not working in a vacuum. They are subject to the the California Public Utility Commission, which is pretty strict regulator.
That's correct. However, they don't have any power over that third party. PUC does not have power over the third party, so that third party is still going to be an issue. Is it not?
I thought the PUC governs.
You're talking about the right-of-way?
The right of
Oh,
way?
the right-of-way. No, you are absolutely correct. Unfortunately, the PUC does not have any power over that right-of-way.
So
It's
that-
if it was a city or any public company, perhaps. But because it's a private individual, a private business person, they do not have the power.
So that still remains an issue for this whole scenario to go forward.
Correct.
Thank you.
Do you have a time frame or estimate of time frame of when those discussions will be had with the third party and when there might be a resolution?
I plan to have a discussion as early as next month. I want to point out that to better understand, you mentioned alternative, we need to understand what the alternatives are. We will need to perform another ETAP, that's another one of these studies, of the system as it is today, and determine how close are we to the condition we expected with the direct tie to the 220 kV. If there is a gap, we will need to find some ways to bridge it if we cannot get the right-of-way issue resolved. The timeline, I would like to think within 6 months, we should be able to have an idea where we go with this.
Okay, and the reason why I asked that in particular is because we've been doing returns to the board for status yearly. Perhaps we should do it 6 months from now, as opposed to in another year, to see where we are, both in the right-of-way, and if that didn't come through, where we are in the any alternative or the ETAP.
I would imagine within 6 months, we can come back and give you a complete update on that.
Any other questions? Senator?
I do recall that when this matter first came before this board, do you recall the fact that the mayor came out to protest?
That's correct.
A lot of community people were protesting. Is that correct?
I do remember.
They're not here today, but they were. Were they concerned about an explosion that took place, or just flares? The potential of an explosion.
The explosion, I believe the one you're referring to, took place in 2015 under ExxonMobil, but that's way before.
Not way before, to 15 to 16 is not that much time elapsed.
Okay, over a year.
The issue, as we've heard today again, the issue that prompted this current order in 2017 was from the flaring events that occurred. And in particular, as we just heard, the 26-minute black smoke flaring event, and that is what is trying to be rectified during the current
Initially,
order.
the district and the respondents both talked about how this problem got addressed in the first place. They went way back. And so therefore, what I'm trying to find.
That is not connected.
Please, Madam Chair.
I'm just keeping us on track. We have
We're
a
on
current
track, Madam
order.
Chair. I'm asking a few questions.
Okay, I'm letting the public know that is not related to the
Well, let the-
current order for abatement. You
Please
can
do
ask.
that, but allow me to ask a question. The first failure, we talked about that at that point in time, was due to the birds. If you're going to fix the problem, you got to find out what causes the problem. The smog, or the birds, or whatever, or failure on the part of some of the subsystems. And that's why we started talking about reliability of the systems. Please.
Understood. You asked about an explosion, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You have other questions, then ask them.
You make me lose my train of thought.
You were asking
interrupt me.
about birds and other reasons why they're, and going to the root of the power failures from 2016.
I didn't lose that thought. I just happened to raise it just in case. There are one failure. One was the fog, and one was the birds. That stuck in my mind, that the birds caused the failure.
Actually, it was a balloon. There were several balloons, and during the graduation and birthday parties, some of these balloons are metallic. They're a Mylar balloon, and they actually conduct electricity, and they shorted. So my understanding and my recollection of this abatement order went into effect because of the 3 events that we had in 2016, 2 in September, 1 in October, and we ended up with significant flaring and significant black smoke, and that's how the abatement order came to play.
And when you have a failure, you have flaring. Is that what you say?
When it's what?
When there's a failure, the likelihood that you would have flaring. Is that correct?
Not always, but sometimes when there's a power disruption, depends on the duration of the power disruption. Sometimes we can, if it's within the 10th second, there should be no flaring, no smoking flaring, no disruption at all. When you go above the 10th of a second, it depends how long and what the magnitude of the power disruption is to tell us whether we're going to end up with flaring event and whether these flaring event will end up with smoking.
Well, I understand you minimized it today, but during that time when the community was complaining, it was a long duration, and it wasn't necessarily due to the smog or fog.
That was the initiating event.
Right.
The fog initiated.
And the birds.
It was just corrected to be the Mylar balloons.
What?
The correction was made that it was not birds, but Mylar balloons.
That's what he said, but at the time of the hearing, he said it was the birds. And I'm just saying.
I don't recall that.
You don't recall, but I do. And I'm saying if that's the case, will the birds, all the upgrading and so on, can the birds cause that kind of problem again?
The bird has to be fairly, the wingspan has to be fairly large to be able to contact 2 of these cables. But the system that they put in place, even if that was to happen, even if they had balloons now and birds or fog, the relay system is responding now so much faster that the impact on the refinery should be minimal or none at all.
And the relay system is in place already, or going to be put in place?
It's
by 20
already, it's mostly in place. They spent over $100 million putting it in place.
So by
We're
20
already seeing the results from that chart.
Right, so by 2020, you finish all that upgrading.
We should be very close to finishing the
So
upgrade.
therefore, regardless of the wingspan of the bird or the fog and so on, it eliminate the failure.
I cannot guarantee that nothing will happen, but I can say that the trend is very favorable, and we're showing the reduction of these events, and we are already talking about 2.5 years, 2016, 17, 18, and 19. So the trend is in the last 3 years is very, very favorable.
And it may be helpful to point out that the power outages that the senator's talking about are power outages on Southern California Edison's lines.
Right.
These are not outages that are caused by the behavior
That is correct.
of the refinery. So what the witness is talking about is the response to those failures on the Edison side. What Edison does on their side to rectify these failures, though we know something about it, is something you would have to call an Edison witness and ask them specifically about, as Ms. Verdugo-Peralta said.
I recall there was an Edison side, that is correct. But then you had failures on the refinery side as well, because that's why you upgraded the equipment. And came in with a mean time to failure, mean time to repair,
Sorry, I may have not,
over which you have control
I may
of
have,
those failures.
I may have not explained it right. The enhancement and improvement that we have made inside the fence line, inside the refinery, is basically with the equipment that we have that would have tripped after a very short duration of a power disturbance.
Right.
We have upgraded that equipment to such that it can withstand much longer duration for this disruption. For example, under the old system, any disruption that lasted 6 or 7 cycles or more, remember there are 60 cycles per given second,
Right.
we would trip the equipment and start causing equipment shutdown in the refinery. We're now looking at equipment that will last 10 and sometimes 20 cycles, triple and quadruple the duration. So that's the enhancement. So it's not that we are preventing these events that happen in SCE. That's SCE's responsibility. But on our end,
Right.
we're making the equipment so much more robust that it can handle that kind of disruption
And is the redundant system in place?
and the redundant system in place.
All right. I had to get the background information so it can be clear in my mind is what caused the problem and what we're doing to fix it. It may be smog or the birds or whatever, but I had to have that clear in my mind.
And it's always
Thank you,
good,
Madam Chair.
and it's always good for the public to be very clear as well. Ms. Verdugo Peralta, you have another question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just one question going back to page 11, where we have the photograph of the gentleman in front of,
I'm going to take this opportunity to remark this exhibit. We incorrectly, sorry? I'm sorry? Yes or no? It should be E. We marked it as Exhibit 17. It should be Exhibit E for Respondent's Exhibit. I think we marked the last one incorrectly at the last hearing. So it should be E as an egg. Sorry, Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
okay. So in that picture of the gentleman, those are insulators?
You can see the conduit, and then you see, this is not a real picture, this is a depiction of what we had intended to do.
Okay.
And in it, you see in these white, they look more like white, I know it's very difficult to see, are the actual cables that are going through this conduit.
Okay, so,
Remember, this is a fairly high voltage, you're talking about 220,000 volts.
okay, but these are, for lack of another description, these are the insulators that are
Correct.
going to be on the overhead system going into your property?
That's correct.
Okay, so
Under
does-
under the property of that business owner.
Under the property, these are going to go under the property of the business owner?
Yes, that's the issue with the right-of-way.
Okay,
So that space between these two buildings that we wanted to put these cables are owned by one of these building owners.
okay.
And
So-
that's the dilemma that we
So
have.
this is not the normal insulator that we see up on the pole, that you're getting underground service from an overhead source?
This has to be even more robust, that's correct.
Okay, because you understand that if they were, part of your maintenance would have to be to wash them as well, right?
You are correct, although this is not subject to
This is
weather.
not overhead.
Because it's all contained within that casing
And this, so
underground.
this is theoretically
Cor-
going to be underground?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but I don't want to go back. One moment, we're just trying to determine numbering and lettering of our exhibits.
Madam Chair, could we go off the record for 5 minutes?
Yeah, this is a good time to do that. In fact, let's take a 15-minute break. Let's be back at just after 10:30.
I've marked it before, like Exhibit 16, the previous, and the district exhibit D and E, so. How did you get to? 16, the last time
We had D and we had E?
No, the district exhibit was D. I think this was Mr. Camarina's note, this is my note, exhibit number 16, or the petition, or the statement, stipulated order, I had it at 16, so this being 17 was probably.
See, let me, can
See,
you come over here?
let me,
We're back on the record, and I'm not going to ask anyone to pull out exhibits from the previous hearings, but we're going to be correcting a minute order from the previous last status hearing. And I'll wait, so Mr. McDonough can understand. So the last minute order, the last status. We're back in session. I already said that. The last status conference, we unfortunately reversed how we were marking exhibits for petitioner and respondent. So we're going to be redoing that minute order, and so I'm just going to say it on the record, but no need to pull it out right now. We had marked, you may recall, there was an attempt to put it on the consent calendar, and so we had a proposed order. We marked that as Exhibit D as in dog. We're going to mark it correctly as Exhibit 15 for petitioner district. Also, we had marked 2 respondents' exhibits incorrectly, the declaration of Mr. Sneer and the status hearing statement. They were both marked as Exhibits 15 and 16 respectively, and we're going to remark them properly as E and F respectively, and there will be a new minute order to reflect that, or an updated one. So that will mean that we once again, and hopefully for the last time, need to remark the presentation today. It will now be G, Exhibit G, and it will remain that way. Exhibit G as in George. Okay.
Madam Chair, should we also be correcting on the minute order under reminder and people who are present, myself and Dr. Bernstein?
There will be a new minute order for today.
Okay, with those changes.
This minute order was from the last hearing, so you were not present. So there will be a new minute order for today, but this is just corrections to the previous minute order. Okay. I'm sorry? Thank you. Okay, so we had additional questions. Anyone else had questions for Mr. Sneer? Is that where we left off? Where we hit?
We just have, when everybody's done, I have one quick redirect question to just clear something up, and we're done.
Okay, why don't we do that? Oh, Senator, do you have additional questions? Because Mr. Balagopalan had
If
a
you
question for someone
recall,
else.
we tried to get Edison in here, if you recall, to try to explain who's responsible for fixing the problem. Do you recall that? The request for Edison, I think they wrote a letter.
I don't think we requested Edison to be.
It was requested that Edison appear during the hearing. It was requested that Edison appear to,
I think we might have
confirm.
noted that Edison was not present, but we have no power to request Edison.
I don't
to show.
remember any formal request for Edison. There may be questions about it, of course.
There definitely
yeah,
were
but there was
questions
questions
about it.
about it at the time. I know I raised the question for sure. I'm new. I was new here. I was just only been here for 3 years. But in 2016, I was not here at all. Okay? So I'm just like the new members. But I got so involved because of the governing board had a hearing in Torrance. And so therefore, I asked those questions on this issue. It's a very explosive issue. But anyway, I think I recall they sent a letter. It should be part of the file.
I don't know who purportedly wrote a letter, but the board did not, and I don't believe unless the district did, and Mr. Sneer and Mr. Sneer and Mr. McDonough are saying that respondent did not either.
They did not appear. They did not appear. No.
They did not appear because they're not parties to this
of the fix.
proceeding. Right, but they're not parties to the proceeding over which we have jurisdiction. There was no request for a subpoena. Is there a question, though, that you have? Okay. Okay. If there were no other questions, then I'll have Mr. McDonough, and I know Mr. Balagopalan, you had another question for maybe another witness. But as for, if you want to,
Well, I mean, our question actually responds to one of the comments you had before, so maybe it makes sense to have your comment first, and then we'll try to respond.
Thank you. I was actually just wanted a clarification because on page 8 of the status hearing order, at the very
Are you saying the status hearing statement?
statement, yeah,
Okay.
statement, sorry. Page 8, line 25, at the very bottom, and it follows up to next page, 365 days from the issuance of order, evaluate, if you look at the second bullet item on page 9 in the very top, it talks about the fire water monitor and the alkylation unit deluge system. And then it follows up to the page 10, which is where it talks about it, starting from line 23, the fire water monitor and alkylation deluge system. So it appears that a study was done, some evaluation was done and submitted, and then a statement was made. I just wanted to get clarification, what was the evaluation results, and were there any changes made to the monitor and the alkylation deluge system, if any?
The study has been done. The recommendation are being implemented. I believe the last installation of the auto restart for these pumps is either in the final stage of implementation or will be in the next couple of weeks.
So, sorry, Mr. Smear, so when you say auto restart, so that automatically,
Right.
when the
It
power goes
sense-
off,
It senses the pressure of the system. When the pressure goes below a certain point, it basically starts the next pump to deliver the pressure and the volume of water necessary.
so that's ongoing and it'll be,
It's ongoing and it's being implemented, and I believe it will be completed within the next couple of weeks.
and that applies to
If
all,
it's not already in place, yeah.
that applies to all the 9 pumps, or you mentioned,
I
or
believe all the pumps.
all the pumps? And so, and what about the curtain that you mentioned? Is
That-
that something new, or was that already an existing?
That,
Yeah, and this may be a good time to introduce the question that I was going to ask, because it may help clarify this. So maybe you could clarify for the board, the fire pumps and water curtain we're talking about are independently backed up by diesel generators, is that true?
that's correct.
Okay. So I think what we're trying to get at is that you're talking about a different system than what we're talking about here. Here, we're talking about the management of electricity needs in this system, but the backup power that you're talking about is actually provided by diesel generators, which would supply the power in the event of a power outage.
Right, but, I realize that, but then you also are making changes so that it's auto restarts on the pump, so that as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, when pressure drops, are you,
That's correct.
so the pumps have been replaced or been changes made?
The control scheme.
Control
basically.
scheme, okay.
Right. Right, but but. So, we're good.
So when it says here it's independent, reliable, and adequate, it's independent because you have a backup power to run those pumps.
And independent, it doesn't require human being to press on a button to
Press
start
the
the pump.
button, as you mentioned earlier, that you needed.
Typically, you can a control room operator can start within a minute, but the whole idea is to speed up that process and provide the supply of the volume of water as well as the pressure of the.
Okay, thank you.
Senator.
Back to Edison, on page 8. Now, you saying that Edison won't tell you what the problems are.
Now we are on page 8 of the PowerPoint presentation, Exhibit G.
You saying Edison won't share with you what causes the failure, so therefore it doesn't allow you to fix the problem. And yet, in the first paragraph on page 8 about the automation system upgrade, you're sharing that with Edison. Are you guys working together?
When you ask about the problem, Senator, are you talking
Yes,
about
but
the
let him answer.
problem on the, we need to clarify this question. Are you talking about the problem on the Edison side, or are you talking about problems that were
Where is
inside
this
the
problem?
faceline?
You got him with the automation systems upgrade. Who's fixing that?
Things that are happening on the fence line, he can speak
Well,
to.
well, let him answer.
Okay, if you can speak to what's happening inside the fence line.
You
not on
interrupted
Edison
me
side.
also. Let him answer. He's the expert.
We don't
not you.
understand the question, Senator.
Well, you're not. You don't need to
Okay,
understand the
Senator,
question.
just let's make it a
You don't
clear.
need to understand the question.
We all,
Wait a minute, the
Senator.
engineer understands the question.
Okay, well, we all need to understand the question so that we all understand the answer.
Well, then ask some questions that are relevant. Then we'll understand it. But this one is relevant.
So can you restate?
Automation systems upgrade.
What is the
What is the
question?
question?
Edison, this being shared with Edison, are you working with Edison in terms of fixing the problems that you don't know about?
No, we do not participate in the design and the understanding of the upgrade that they're doing. This is all internal to SCE. This is their own engineer, their own
Automation system upgrade, who's putting that in?
Edison.
Wait, can we just clarify, because page 8 is all Edison upgrades, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, page 8 is all Edison upgrades.
Okay, very good. So Edison's putting this in. All right, thank you.
Okay. Oh, did you have more questions, Senator?
Then what action are you taking regarding this upgrade? If Edison gonna do this upgrade of the automation system upgrade, by what authority you have to suggest that they're gonna do that? Are you working with Edison?
We meet with them on regular basis, we communicate with them on daily basis, but I don't have any authority over Edison. This is their own.
I know that.
This is their own design, their own upgrade to help us achieve the reliability, not just us, but the 60,000 other customers that rely on that La Fresa substation.
The point's well made and understood at this point. It's clear. All right, Edison is doing it and they're saying, we know what the problems are and we're gonna fix the problem by incorporating in the system an automation system upgrade. That's what they're saying.
That's correct.
All right.
Okay, anyone else have questions for Mr. Sneer? Thank you, Mr. Sneer. Mr. McDonough, do you have any other witnesses you wish to present today?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sue, do you wish to present any witnesses today?
No, I do not.
Okay. And I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public that are present today. Oh. Okay. Do you have a quote for the person who's present? Yeah. Okay. Would it be appropriate? Not appropriate, but Mr. Balagopalan has a question he'd like to ask the district inspector. So perhaps if you could introduce.
Sure, can we hear the question first?
Yes.
Yeah, I know, I just wanted to find out if he is familiar with the tabletop exercise, or did the previous inspector update him on it, or has he been involved in subsequent exercise with the refinery?
Well, I can't say Steve Zamora was the inspector at the time of the tabletop exercise. So we could have Mr. Paul Caballero testify. If you could please state your name and spell it for the record.
Sure, my name is Paul Caballero, Caballero. I'm the assigned inspector for the Torrance Refinery. I was assigned the refinery July of 2018.
So were you familiar, Mr. Calabro, of the tabletop exercise?
I was not. I've taken part with other tabletop exercises regarding other facilities, but this particular one that's mentioned in the statement, I am not.
But you will be the point of contact if they have another tabletop exercise?
Going forward, I would be
you
the
would be the
contact.
one? Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we close the hearing? Okay, thank you. I asked if there was any member of the public, and I don't see any. So I don't know, Ms. Sue, if you'd like to give any kind of closing?
Yes, just first, you mentioned the minute order. I also wanted to say that I was present at the time of the last hearing, so if you could please include my name if you're making changes to the minute order. And I know there was some discussion about the causes of the October 11, 2016 power outage. I wanted to refer the board members to the findings and decisions that was signed by Ms. Prusak on February 21st, 2017, on page 4, paragraph 10. It does say that I could wait until people have it in front of you.
So we're in the original,
The original findings and decision.
I don't know if I'll find it, but if I don't, then if you could read it. What is the number of it?
I don't know the number, but it was the one that is dated February 21st, 2017.
Okay. Not sure if
I'm happy to read
read
the-
it, that
the
would be, I don't know
paragraph.
if, I don't think all of us do anyway.
So on page 4 of that order, paragraph 10. The original order, correct. Page 4, paragraph 10. It says, on October 11, 2016, the refinery again experienced a power supply interruption. The power supply interruption resulted when SCE experienced a sudden and unexpected power supply interruption outside the refinery from SCE's La Freja substation due to an SCE wiring error. The refinery was without power from SCE for a total of 26 minutes. I just wanted to read that to you because I know there was testimony regarding what was the cause.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And now I'm ready to close. The Torrance Refinery has been complying with the terms of the order, and these improvements have already been bearing fruit, as you have seen, based on the flaring vent and the lack of any opacity limitations exceedance. Mr. Sneer testified there are 2 outstanding items. The refinery may make modifications to the 220 kV design and an upgrade to the aux boiler at the next turnaround scheduled in April. Improvements to the boiler will allow for 30 minutes of boiler operation, and the steam produced by this boiler would further reduce the possibility of smoking flaring. We have spoken to the Torrance Refinery. They're willing to come back for another status hearing and also provide an update on the ETAP analysis that Mr. Sneer had testified to. And the ETAP analysis will look at the current infrastructure, and that way the board will be able to see what is the result of the improvements that have already been made. We look forward to updating the hearing board on these improvements at the next hearing. Thank you.
Mr. McDonough.
Enough said.
Board members,
Do we set a date for the next?
let's discuss what we've heard today and what action, if any, we would take today. And as we know, when we have these status hearings, we always notice them as a status and modification in case there's any modifications that are required. The parties have not requested, neither party has requested a modification. And given the testimony we received today and the update that we received in advance, I don't see any reason to modify the order. The order, as we heard today, seems to be working in all respects up till the present. In terms of all the upgrades that have been made, in terms of the presentation of evidence showing that both the occurrence of flaring as well as the duration of flaring, and I think most importantly, the well, the duration of flaring, but also the type of smoke we're seeing from the flaring. We're not seeing any of those for the last few years since this order has been in place and the upgrades have been occurring. We have not seen that black smoke from flaring, again, which was the alarming impetus for this order. We do see, however, that there are some glitches on the final portion of what was originally proposed and contemplated, which is the 220 kV proposal, and we see the issue with the right-of-way. But we also heard testimony that those discussions will occur hopefully beginning next month, and that there is a possibility of the fact that the same types of reliability that we would be seeing with that might already be covered by the changes. And so there might be alternatives we might need to go to, or an evaluation, which would take about 6 months to determine whether or not an alternative even is required. And so my suggestion is that we take no action today, but instead set, I was going to say 6 months from today, but I think let's do it 7 months at the end of August, so that we know we have everything, and everything has been evaluated and seen both by the district and by Torrance Refining. And so, but before I do that, I'd like to hear from other board members with regard to taking no action today and what everyone's thoughts are, if anyone has any additional thoughts. Did you miss?
Oh, no, yeah, I agree.
Mr.
I don't think we need to take any action today. We've got a status update. It looks like they're proceeding, and they still have the issue of the right-of-way, and hopefully that will resolve. Will get resolved, and they will have the connection to the refinery. However, the next hearing, I'd just like some clarification on the deluge system, and maybe it says it has the independent, maybe say there's a backup generator so that it's clear that's how it's independent, and, you know, if you're making changes to the pump, maybe that can be explained a little further as part of, if the previous evaluation took care of that.
Always helpful, because we know this was something that is very concerning to the nearby community, which I should probably put on the record I am part of. Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the fact that you're working in concert with Edison, trying to do everything that you can on your side of the fence versus anything that Edison's responsible on their side of the fence, understanding that regardless of the outages, if it's not involving you, you're not the source. The sources would have to come from the outside. That being said, my biggest concern is that third party. And I think I would request that you monitor them, have more conversations with Edison regarding informing you of how they are progressing. That would be my only change.
I believe Mr. Sneer had mentioned that he was having his own conversations with that third party as well next month.
And if you can keep us apprised of that, I think that as long as we're aware of what's going on, and if we need any, or you need any assistance for us to contact them, whatever you need to do. Otherwise, I definitely think, as Dr. Bernstein mentioned, that there should be some type of a plan B, just in case.
And just so we are aware, I can't recall exactly where it is, but in the order, there is a requirement for quarterly updates with regard to the 220 kV proposal. And so that is required, and I assume will continue quarterly.
We also have a suggested proposed condition that the parties have agreed to regarding the ETAP study, if you would
Yes,
like to hear it now.
please.
The refinery shall perform an ETAP analysis, and I can also send this in writing to the clerk so she has the actual language. The refinery shall perform an ETAP analysis based on the current electrical infrastructure and provide an update of the analysis at the next hearing. The analysis shall compare the reliability, open parentheses, mean time between failure and mean time to repair, close parentheses, of the electrical supply as it exists today to the system at the time the abatement order was instituted, comma, as well as to the future system reliability if the Harrison substation is constructed as currently designed.
Is there a timeframe on the ETAP?
They had originally said 6 months, so maybe the next status hearing could be 6 months or 7 months from now.
Yes, but in the condition that you
There is
just-
not, because there is not as I currently have read it, no.
Okay, is there, would there be an agreement to put one in, or is there, or we just have an understanding based upon the testimony today that it would take 6 months and be done? But I think it wouldn't hurt to say a time frame of when it would begin.
And I just wanted clarification that there was already a ETAP study done. This is an additional ETAP study.
After
Correct.
this is an ETAP study for now that all of the changes and upgrades have been made to the system.
And I thought Mr. Mayor mentioned may have to do the ETAP if they have to reroute it and not go through those buildings and they have to go another route, then they have to do a further ETAP analysis. So I don't know.
Well, do we want to, I think we should probably open up, I see Mr. Sneer wants to add, so maybe we should reopen the hearing to hear a little bit more information on the timing, and I think that's what your question is, the timing. So I assume 3 members agree to, yes, okay, I see 3 members. So we're reopening for this.
So the ETAP that was performed is a snapshot of the condition of the electrical system as the study was done a couple of years ago. So we know where we were, and we knew where we want to go, and then that was utilized to determine the expected reliability once we connected to a 220 kV system. A new ETAP is necessary now since we have made a lot of changes, a lot of improvement has been made. We need to take another snapshot and compare today, where we are today, versus to where we were 2 years ago. Based on that, we can see how close we are to the reliability expectation that was set when we originally put the 220 kV system in place. So it will give us an idea. If we are very close to where we are, perhaps we're already where we need to be. If there is a gap, then we need to propose the alternative, how to bridge it.
And I think the timing of that condition is important because, if we're gonna have a hearing in 7 months from now, then we would want to not wait. If there's still an issue with the right-of-way, the ETAP should probably be initiated in a month from now, so that we already have it in time for the next status.
That's correct. The
So
ETAP
the
is
question, I'm sorry, Mr. Stranger, so should the ETAP be done if you don't get wait till you show up the right of way? Should there be another, you mentioned if you don't have the right of way, then ETAP analysis may have to be performed because of the rerouting.
It would be a good idea to do the ETAP anyway, just to know where we are. So, but the ETAP is a very extensive study. It takes enormous amount of details and information. I wouldn't wait with it. I would start with this right away. In the next couple of weeks. We have to
So-
gather the information, start the modeling, do the analysis, and come back to you in 6 or 7 months. I would ask for the 7 months because 6 months is pushing it a little bit.
Okay, so if we could, obviously did not take down that entire condition, but it begins with the refinery shall perform, so shall, within, I don't know.
Within 7 months sounds like what Mr. Sneer is comfortable with agreeing to, is that?
Well, I was looking at the next status hearing, and I was going to check with schedule, but potentially being Wednesday, August 26th. And that would be 7 months, approximately.
That works for us.
Okay, so, and how long before would the district want to see that ETAP evaluation?
I think by the end of July, would that be possible?
Is that possible? Okay, so we will take the condition as proposed by the district, and it will say shall by July 31st perform an ETAP analysis. And then we would set, and is there a thought of where that condition might might land if we were to make a motion to modify.
Make it the last condition,
Well, not the last.
second to last.
I think maybe after 13.
How about
before 14.
before 14? How about we make it the new 14? The status will, the status conference will, but we're setting when the ETAP is due, so that,
The previous ETAP did.
okay, and then we already have 13. So I think it's okay if we can, okay, so before we close the hearing, okay, so then the proposal will be, okay, you have a question. Let me just sum this up, and then please ask the question. But the proposal is this new 14 with regard to the ETAP, it will be done by July 31st, and then what is already condition 13, we would just change out the date for August 26th. Okay, and then you had a question before we close.
Mrs. Sneer, you said early on that you meet with Edison periodically. How often do you meet with them in terms of solving the problem?
A monthly management meeting and review of the status of the project. We have daily, sometimes hourly communication via text or telephone. And we meet as there is issue that may need a resolution, such as scheduling the preventive maintenance that they have, or any activity that we may have that they need to know about.
So since they've incorporated in this system, the automation system upgrade, how many failures, if any, did they had on the external side?
You mean how many power disruptions
Yeah,
they
yeah.
had? I mean, I can bring the chart back and we can actually look.
Okay,
at
and then we're not going to go much beyond this, because we reopened for the question regarding the ETAP study. But
But I
let's,
need the question answered, Madam Chair.
understood, but we agreed to open it for a limited reason. But let's answer this question, then we're going to close
In
again.
2019.
Maybe to open it again so you can have my question answered like you opened it for the other person.
I just said we're going to have the question answered.
All right, thank you. You always interrupt me, I don't know why.
2019, throughout the 12 months of the year, we had 8 power disruption from Edison.
Okay, and so the automated systems upgrade didn't correct that, is what you,
It corrected it in that there were fewer of them that year, and they were shorter in duration and lower in magnitude. The power loss was much smaller than you would typically expect if you did not make these changes.
thank you.
Anything else before we close? Oh, well, I just want to make sure we don't have any more. Okay. So we're going to reclose the hearing, and then we are still in discussion. Did you wish to add to the discussion of, so originally we were discussing no action, but now we have these 2 modifications that we would propose.
No action, that's my position as well. You explained it very well in terms of enlightening me what action is being taken monthly, daily, instantaneously, when there may be a problem, about in the event of a failure, a short-term duration which does not adversely affect anything in the community. But the reason why I was concerned initially, I was new on the board when this matter first came before us. And there's been a community uproar in terms of black smoke and explosion that were taking place early on. And I paid a lot of attention to it, that problem. The governing board paid a lot of attention to it also. And they had a meeting in the district with the participating from the community, the mayor, et cetera. And we had our first meeting here, and the place was filled with people. So they are concerned about what action you're taking to correct the problem. So far, the progress report suggests that you're proactive in that regard. To that extent, we accept what you presented to us today in the file, and I see no further action necessary to be taken, except we have another status report.
Okay. And the proposal will also be to have this new analysis done as well. Anyone else wish to? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion with regard to modification of the standing order for abatement. And so in the matter of South Coast Air Quality Management District versus Torrance Refining Company LLC, case number 6060-5, I move that we make two modifications to the current order. The first will be to condition 13 with regard to the next status hearing and modification hearing. And that will be now on August 26th, 2020. And the second will be, I will not be able to read it into the record. However, I understand that the clerk will have a copy of it typed out from the district, and it will essentially require that by July 31st, 2020, that Torrance Refining Company will conduct an ETAP, which is an electrical transient analysis program, an ETAP analysis, and that will be specified as was read into the record, and that will complete my motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta seconds. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none. Senator, how do you vote? Can I vote? Yes. Okay, he votes aye. Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, how do you vote?
Aye.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0, and we will see you in August. And good luck on that right-of-way.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Is there any other business today, board members? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
I'm glad we actually were able to get it up on the screen.
Yeah, so it looks like.